Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I'm joined as always by Sean, and we are continuing in our interview of Chris George, who not only does he work for the World Series of Board Games, he also runs the Room and Board YouTube channel, which, in addition to all of the things he does, he typically, like every single week, I think he's like 170 something episodes in to this particular series, he reviews crowdfunding campaigns and talks about them and uses, should you back or not back. And he has other videos like, very popular that are like 5 reasons you should not back this particular campaign. And what he does is he looks through rulebooks, he looks through the campaign pages, and he figures out how the game works and what is interesting about it and other things like that. We talk a lot about really, really important stuff. So he tries to educate us on how a campaign page can educate the target market in a way that excites them like a bunch. And, that it's also that it's not so bad to have others that decide the game is not right for them based on what you write. And so it was just a really, really awesome discussion. And so we're just going to jump right into part 2 of Chris George. Here we go.
Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral1.com. Hirschgleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code Crowdfunding Nerds 101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin. Let's go.
Go back to the shadow. You shall not fail. Crowdfunding Nerds.
Amazing.
That's awesome. Now, I want to make a transition into some of the, what we also talked about was the concept of distilling information. But, something that you said really was super intriguing to me from a marketing perspective. I am really interested in your, the Room and Board YouTube channel, how you distill information, in particular when you're looking at a crowdfunding campaign that's been running, because we have a huge portion of our audience are crowdfunding creators or crowdfunding hopefuls, and they just want to make the best possible crowdfunding campaign they can, given the resources that they have. Some people are like, I'll spend, like I talked to a guy earlier today, I'll spend $2,000 a day if this, in scale and whatever. And then someone else is like, well, I have like $20 a day is a lot for me, and I have to do a lot with a little. And so you look at a wide gamut of campaigns. I'm sure you probably also have looked at even my campaigns, before, just at least the most recent one, Council of the Fallen. And so when you look at a campaign, one of the things I wonder, for people listening to this, alarm bells, positive signals, and common threads between, for that you see just across, in both the alarm bells as in like negative signals that you see on a campaign's page, positive signals that you're like, regardless of the funding level, this looks good. Obviously higher funding, good, lower funding, not funded, bad. But let's say, given I'm assuming probably most of what you cover are funded campaigns at that point, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to hear from you, because you read the rule books and other things like that. When you put your content together to say, here are 5 reasons you shouldn't back or whatever, what are the most common things? And then how can our listeners avoid doing those things? Or do the things that are positive?
I think those are great questions. We can start with some of the negatives. Most of the stuff I look at is funded or will be around 90% funded, because realistically, if something is 50% funded going into its last week, it's probably not going to get there. I'll still try to look at it and see if there's something that really jumps out at me, but more often than not, it's because there are things that aren't fully fleshed out. And I think for me, again, it comes down to the consumer experience, the purchaser's experience, right? And to make sure that the purchaser gets the correct thing for them. And so the green flags, I know I just said I would talk about red flags, but I guess we're talking about green flags. The green flags are that the campaign knows what it is. It knows who it is for, and it is unabashedly about those people. I find that campaigns that have that sort of clear through line, that have the gameplay examples, that have the little breakdown of how to play, that have a rule book that is easily accessible, that have multiple ways for people to learn about the game and to learn how it will play and how it will actually feel, versus the generic things that you see on every campaign game, which is it's going to be an immersive story, 100 hours, right? Narrative like
Infinite
you've never
replayability.
seen before. There's 1,700,000 combinations with these different cards. You're always going to get the same game. Like that essentially gives you nothing as the consumer. That's not helpful. It's not helpful information. And so it's the difference between like what is helpful information and what isn't helpful information. Even down to the videos. Like I always start. I'll click on a campaign. I will watch the video. I'll go scroll down to see a little bit of their contents until it becomes an overwhelming swath of like, look at these cool shiny things. Scroll all the way past that, get to their tiny how to play section, see if there are like a good 5 to 7 step breakdown of what the game flow is, and then I'll click through the rule book and try to answer any questions that I have come through. Like that is my process of figuring out what is this game about, who is it for. And I think games that are active in like communicating that are always super green flags to me, regardless of if I like the game or not, right? Because I'll put my own personal preferences in there. I will always say, oh, I'm in Canada, our dollar's horrible, plus shipping, this is going to be too expensive for me, right? And so like the bar for my personal backing is going to be a lot higher than most of the audience watching, because just because shipping's awful and our dollar is very poor. So putting that price aside, so I'll always say, too expensive, but looks good, right? Like that's something I find myself repeating over and over and over. But I think it for a game to be really good, you need to be able to really communicate what that game experience is going to be. And if you do that, you will find your audience, and people will get excited, or at least I will get excited. There's also things that I know that I talk about that don't matter whatsoever for my own personal preferences, that don't have an impact on if the game is successful or not. Like I like when a game offers standee pledges, but I also think that for first time creators, you shouldn't do it because nobody ever picks them. People go for the minis. People like the shiny. It's just what it is. Maybe that'll change with costs getting higher and higher. Like we've seen Awakened Realms now have a number of standee pledges, which have done very well. In addition to having like the minis extra pledges, but I think that is just based upon their size and scale. And even though I would love a standee pledge for everything, I know I'm in the minority of that. Other red flags are, I mean, low funding, like backer. If you're looking for like scams, this is just from a consumer standpoint as well. Like the low number of backers versus the amount raised just shows that, oh, okay, they got a bunch of friends to donate a couple $1,000s so that you pass the goal, so that you're funded, so that it's funded in the first week, so that you can play the Kickstarter algorithm. And so paying attention to those sorts of things as a consumer, I go, well, I don't really believe that you can deliver on this promise. I don't know if you've made enough money to actually deliver on this promise. And so, like, I don't think I know everybody on Kickstarter uses fake funding goals, but I don't think it's beneficial in the long run, because you're either going to lose money, or you are going to not be able to deliver on your product down the line. And so I think canceling is a good thing if you are not making the money. even if you have done that fake funding goal and then people cancel, they've raised 100,000 over their $10,000 that they said they would do to get onto the Kickstarter algorithm, and then they cancel. I'm like, good. It is better to cancel than to take everybody's money and then not deliver on a product, right? And so I try to think about those sorts of things in terms of funding. But for me, it's mainly about knowing if if you have thought through the entire process as a creator. I remember when I went to, and if you can distill again, if you can communicate how effectively that can be communicated to the backers. I know that's kind of my job as well, and what I do is try to pull out the things that I think are interesting, and I'll often enjoy doing deep dives because it allows me to pull out the little mechanics that I find meaningful now, having looked into these things for a while. But I feel very proud of anything that I have backed has delivered on the exact promise of what I wanted that game to be, because I've looked into it, because I've been able to distill it, and because the creator did a good enough job of communicating that to me. And if those things aren't there to communicate that to me, then I don't see why people should back just based around a promise. I think they should
Yep.
back based around actual tangible things, and then sure, things can change in development, but backing on those clear things. I remember when I went to Origins, the only time I've been to Origins, I saw the guy who was demoing Distilled, which has now been very popular, but it was the slickest demo I have ever seen, still to this day, because he had
Yep.
practiced it. Like, he'd practiced the pitch. He knew the pitch. He had cool little card movements, and like flipped up the cards at the right time. He'd set the deck in a way that he flipped over the cards in a way that, like, oh, it can be this sort of card or this sort of card or this sort of card. And it was so impressive because it was thought out. It was so impressive because he was communicating the vision of the game in a very slick way, but he communicated the vision of the game. Like, it was impressive because the game got communicated, and he knew what the game was about, and he knew what to target. And so I
Yep.
think, like, applying that, knowing the elevator pitch that you would do, you need to know that 10-second breakdown. You need to know the 30-second breakdown. You need to know the minute breakdown, because people have varying attention spans, and having those key in points, I find, is very helpful and makes me get excited about a campaign, even if I ultimately go, too expensive for me, but looks good. Right? Like, I still
Yeah.
think, like, those are the core things that I try to look for.
Yeah, Dave Beck actually, Distilled was one of our campaigns that we ran,
Oh,
and we helped Dave with marketing and everything on Distilled and Luthier, and
yeah.
I actually reached out to Dave when I was going to various conventions for our expansion campaign for Deliverance Council of the Fallen. I reached out to Dave and we talked about, like, what do I need for my booths? I want to amp it up and get a larger booth and have
Right.
more going on, and we talked about a lot of that, and there were certain things that I knew I absolutely needed to have. And based on my own experience, and one of them is I need to have like a 5-second, what is it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it in like 5 seconds? And
100%.
then a question like, would you like to see how, like, a quick, 30-second demo of how this works? And, sometimes it's like, oh, no, we're just looking, or, oh, that, yeah, sure. And a lot of the time it was always a very positive thing, even when they're like, oh, no. I give them an easy way out. And I'm
Yeah.
asking them, do you want to get out now? You want to get out of the boat now? Or
Yeah.
like, are we going to the next destination? And oftentimes people would be like, yeah, let's go to the next destination. Or no, like, we're going to come back around later. And they would, and,
Yeah.
so, it was very fantastic. But yeah, so what you're talking about with a lot of this is the target market
Mm-hmm.
that I harp on this all the time. You need to know your target market. You need to say what your game is and who it's for. It doesn't mean you're excluding other people, like Deliverance is it's not like a dudes on a map skirmish game. Like, this is a
Yeah.
game about angels slaying demons and protecting saints. If you like the idea of a
Yeah.
Christian fantasy dungeon crawler, if you're if you wish there was Christian D&D out there that was actually good, then Deliverance is
it.
your game.
Yeah.
It happens so that about 45% of our audience are total atheists. And they're
Right.
like, there is no God, but I like this game.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I was, in theory, I was excluded, and I'll always go with the religious thing because that's what the game is.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.
But I think that's important.
It's just
like it's part of the sell. It's part of what makes your game unique as well. And then other people will find it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like if I were to tell you, you know, oh, this is a really good tactical skirmish RPG like systems and whatnot. You can level up and you can build your character and whatever. It's very generic. But then you get in there and you're like, wait, this looks Christian. You know, what's this like? Is this like a Catholic angel here? And like, am I gonna be preached at? Like, all of a sudden, like you start getting all of these problems, right? But even with something that's innocuous, like I don't know, Terraforming Mars, you know, great game. It's a sci-fi card drafting, card playing, engine building game. It's like, well, that could be a lot of things, right? But then you get into it, it's like, actually, it's a 4-hour sci-fi. You know, it can be if you got guys like Sean and I thinking about our turns for so long. But I think, you know,
activate.
Yep. So, but anyway, I think that it makes a lot of sense to try to be as upfront as you possibly can about what your product is to help the right people qualify themselves and the wrong people disqualify themselves. That disqualifying oneself is a good thing to say, like, oh, this product is not the right fit for me because I don't like set collection, or I don't like area control, or I don't like, you know, the theme or whatever. And the right people will be like, oh, I'm really set on fire in a good way about this theme or this.
I think getting into the right hands is so important, not just because it provides like consumer loyalty and repeat customers because you have delivered on something and they're like, this was great, I want more. But also you aren't delivering it to the people who will hate it and will then say this game is awful because they naturally were never going to like it in the first place, right? Like there are games that you're just not going to enjoy. I don't like Twilight Imperium. I have a review of Twilight Imperium. I thought it was atrocious. I thought it was so bad. And then somebody, but I know that like I'm in the minority. But that's good that Twilight Imperium isn't marketing itself to me, like, so that I keep talking about how much I dislike it. You know what I mean? If I'd never played it, that I wouldn't have to talk about how much I disliked it, and then it could still stay as like this amazing thing. But then there was a guy who reached out to me who was like, hey, I also felt the same way about Twilight Imperium. I designed a game that I wanted a Twilight Imperium to be. It's called Galactic Era. He sent it to me, and I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is so good. And like it's about finding, I don't know, it's just about getting the right things into the right people's hands. And that's also, we were talking a little bit about this beforehand too. I am a staunch avid hater of the $1 pre-pledge, where people pay $1 before you've seen anything about a game. And it's because you haven't seen anything about the game. You've seen a pretty little picture. Whoopity friggin' do. You've gotten the promise. You've gotten a generic promise of a bunch of mechanics thrown at you in the mashup. And that's it. And you're promised to have more of these things that you don't even know of yet. And people are like, yeah, buy in now, so that you don't look into it later, so that you don't find out that you don't actually like the game or that the game is bad. And I think that is why I feel like it is an anti-consumer tactic, and why I don't. That's a red flag for me. I don't even cover those games because I assume that if you have to resort to those tactics, that your game isn't good enough to stand on its own. That you and sometimes I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Sometimes the game is good and it'll take off, and you know what? It'll take off later, and I'll find it at retail, and I'll be completely fine with that decision and that like journey to go on. But I just think the risk outweighs the $1, the fake savings that you're getting, the fake little expansion that is just preying upon everybody's collector mentality that they need everything, and that your game will be incomplete without this thing that is completely made up and isn't part of the main game anyway for a reason. I think it is a much better thing to know what your game is and how your game is different, especially in this crowded space. That's another thing that gets forward. When you were saying talking about Deliverance, about like the RPG style, whatever. That's why I was like, who cares? The thing that makes it exciting and makes it different is that it is like a Christian themed thing. And that makes it unique in a way, that makes it stand out from all the other dungeon crawlers that are out there. And if I wanted to play the same game over and over again, I don't have to buy the same game over and over again. I can just play the ones on my shelf. The point of buying a new game is to get a new experience or something that will kind of like elevate your game night. And so I think having that clear focus is so important when talking, especially in the crowdfunding sphere, especially because the games aren't produced yet, right?
Yep.
Because it is a promise, because it is a work in progress, and things do change, and sometimes they change in ways that are positive for you, and sometimes they change in ways that like are worse, and that's
Yep.
part of the deal. But you still have to be excited when it arrives, and things will change. I mean, I backed an all-in for Ankh. I did a lot of research on it. That's because my favorite game is Rising Sun. I love Eric Lang. I think he's a phenomenal designer, and I thought Ankh was not good. And I think, and it was because of a change that happened in development because they nerfed the merge. I remember reading all the design diaries and being like, yeah, cool. The merge god was supposed to be able to take basically double the turns, and then they nerfed it so that you only get like half a turn, so that it equals everybody else's full turn. And I'm sure they nerfed it for a development reason, and I'm sure I like it less because of that. Uh, so you're always going to get these things that can shift and change, but the best thing you can do, like I still didn't regret that purchase. I was like, cool, I was backing this thing, I sold it off, it was fine. But knowing what you're doing and giving your audience enough information so that they can be satisfied and not like disappointed with their purchase, I think is just, I don't know, I just think it's the right thing to do when people are spending hundreds of dollars on a game, right? To give information and make sure that like I do this as a reviewer too. And even with promoting WSBG, if my name is attached to something and I convince somebody to purchase something, I want to make sure that they are informed about the experience. They might like it, they might hate it, sure. If they end up hating it, whatever. But I want to make sure that they knew what the experience was going in, and then they decided that that experience was one that they hated when they played it, not that they were blindsided by getting the wrong experience and saying, "Oh, this isn't what I was expecting," because there were so many buzzwords attached to this. There were so many mechanisms attached to this. There was deck building attached to this, and then the deck building is like 2% of the game. I'm like,
Right.
oh, I really like deck building, but I saw deck building, so I purchased it because it said it was deck building, and it's not deck building. That's
Yep.
what I attempt to do with like any distilling of information as well.
Yeah, I find, I one of the shows that we love is Hell's Kitchen, and there are a bunch of different types of cooking shows that you can watch, but um oftentimes a cook will have, or a chef will have, a plan for the ingredients that they have, and they start to make something. They're like, I'm going to make crepes with filling and it's going to be awesome. But then something goes wrong, and they're pancakes because they're too fluffy. They're not crepes.
Right.
They're fluffy pancakes. They're basically stuffed pancakes. And then when they go to present their whatever meal they made to the judges, they position, the way that they position really matters. And the reason I know that it matters, not just because, if they say, oh, this is stuffed crepes with blah blah blah, the first thing the judge will say was like, this is not a crepe, it's a pancake.
It's a pancake,
And
yeah.
it's a problem because you set expectations that it would be a crepe, and what you've delivered is delicious, but the problem is that is not a crepe. So
people wanted a crepe.
Right, because you told me that I was getting a crepe, right? And
Yeah.
so in the same way, we want to make sure that people know exactly what it is, what a product is, because when they get that product home, it's part of the whole process. Is like, I expect the thing that you promised me, and if it's like, angels and demons, and it's epic feeling of, there's a book series called This Present Darkness that everyone is hoping that Deliverance feels like This Present Darkness the game, and it totally does. And that's the hope that everybody has based on the way
Right.
that I have positioned it. And so if it didn't feel like that, it would be low rated, it would, or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And So I think that for the way that I typically advise, and we'll kind of start to come in for a landing after this, I'd love to get your
Mhm.
feedback on this, um, is in the very first scroll, like below the thumbnail and the title and the subtitle, like that should be very relevant to what your game is. But on the very first scroll, you get like a visual image, typically of the game laid out in some way, or the game
Mhm.
set up in like a mid game state where like cards are out and things are going on. Alongside art, a splash of art, like the big hero image, and then some sort of typically they go into like some story or whatever. Like it's a
Yep.
thing to kind of get you in to what is this thing, like thematically and that kind of thing. But I think that there's oftentimes something missing that I always tell people to do right in this section. It is, I want the answer to what your game is in 6 words or less. And
Mm.
words like and the count. So for Deliverance, it's the Angelic Warfare board game. That and for
Yeah.
actually the Council of the Fallen, it was the Angelic Warfare board game returns. So the 6
Right.
words, and that helped position what it was. We had a 38% conversion rate on day 1 from followers to backers, very high. Obviously it was an expansion game,
Yeah.
made 2, but overall, like in the end, we had an even higher conversion rate than that. It was absurdly high, just because of lots and lots of new players. But I think one of the keys with something like this is, and I wasn't the one to invent this or anything, like there are a lot of campaigns that do a great job telling you what it is. I think Homeworld was where I kind of pulled this from, as Modifius Entertainment. It was
Mm.
like fast-paced, like space fleet battles or something like that, and it was just
Right.
like a really, bam, that's what it is. And so I think that something like that immediately positions your thing. Like, and it's almost like when you're playing a board game or when you're teaching a board game, if you save how to win for last, it's like, I have no context
Yeah.
for what you're
Yeah.
telling me.
Yeah.
I need, like, how do I win? Who am I? How do I win? And why does what I'm doing matter in this thematic world?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you're explaining this is how you win. This is the what is it? What is your board game? So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. How many scrolls will you give something that tells you, before you don't understand? And
Yeah,
you're just
no,
like,
I think
whatever.
I think that's great. I have been shouting from the rooftops that, and again, I don't know if this is the correct thing to do or not, but I have seen of the 2,700 campaigns that I've looked at, there has been exactly one campaign that has put the rule book at the top of the page, at the very top. There's been one campaign, and I feel like I've been talking about that for like 4 years. Uh, again, I understand why people don't put the rulebook at the top, like at the very tippity top, and then but they don't put it in the first scroll. Like rulebook's always down at the end. How to play is always down at the end. And for me, it's because they want to lead with the shiny and they don't want to lead with what the game is. And so having that clear image, you want to see the game, right? Games are visual. Games are we want to see how cool it will look on the table, and you want to get a sense of the scope as well too. Is this like a smaller, what is the footprint, right? And so having that image and that thing right there is great. And then it will generally go into components, and I'll scroll like once or twice, and then I'll jump to the thing that I actually want to do. Unless the minis are incredible, right? Unless they're so mind-blowingly amazing that I just go, oh man, these are cool. Like I want them, and I get sucked into the shiny. Which, like The Witcher Old World did that to me. I remember
Yep.
going back and forth. I was like, oh, look at that frog, whoa, or whatever, right? But for me, especially because I am there to learn about the game, I also need to recognize that I am not necessarily the average person who is looking at the campaign, because I'm looking for a very specific reason, right? I know now the flow of information that I need to get, and I know what to just push to the side and ignore completely and not even look at, because it doesn't help me with my ultimate goals of finding out what the game is. And often that is just the large component scroll and then additional stuff. But yeah, having that clear message feels great to me, because I don't, some people don't watch the videos. Some people don't even click on the play button because they don't want to spend the time watching the video, right? In terms of that, sometimes 2.5 minutes is too long, or they'll click it, they'll go, oh, it's 2 minutes. Nah, what is this game, right? And just scroll down.
30 minutes scrolling.
Yeah, exactly. 30 minutes scrolling later. Yeah, no, didn't have time for the 2-minute explanation. Got to figure it out on my own. Well, I've done that too. Or when like I've heard of a game before, like I generally try to watch all the videos just to see again how the information is being communicated. And I'll say, oh, that was a great video, or that was a bad video. That's how I first got work. I did a wrap for Kagan Productions. I did a wrap on their show reel of stuff, but he first reached out to me because and I didn't even realize I was doing this, but he was like, hey, every time one of my videos pops up, you go, oh, that was a good video. Can I use your reactions as like part of a thing? I was like, oh, I didn't even realize. I don't even know what your videos are, man. Sure, go for it. Like, I don't care. Whatever I was saying, I was doing. But like, because his style is like setting out the information and is telling that like story and communicating like mechanics behind it. Those are the things that I resonate with. That's what makes a good video, rather than a whole 3 minutes of brooding music, art getting slowly zoomed in on and saying the fall of men was there. Years ago in the ether, the demon realm burst forth. What one brave, intrepid explorer took down the horde. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's cool. It's cool, the lore, but like, I have no attachment to your game right now. Like, it's bringing me in, but like, how is this going to translate as a game? And that's also how I find like some campaign games or some games, like they don't. I'm like, I'd play this as a video game. I don't know why I want to play this as like a board game too. So just having that clear message, I think, is great and important.
Yeah.
So, Chris, thank you so much for your time. You probably should wrap things up. But before you kind of point people on how they can connect with you and what's happening with the World Series board game events, I'd like to just quickly, if you could speak briefly on, we've talked about red flags and green flags for pages. And I know that you've spoken a great deal about rulebooks. So if you could quickly just outline maybe some very quick red flags and green flags for your rulebooks, and then kind of come to a close and just how can people connect with you?
Yeah, of course. This has been a blast. I feel like I was potentially a bit scattered because I wanted to just spout out as much information as I could. It's always fun. It's always fun to hang out and to chat about the things that we love and we're passionate about, right? Like, I'm sure that's the main reason why this podcast exists, is to communicate that knowledge and enthusiasm. But yeah, for a rule book for me, I think again having that structure is great, because I see a lot of rule books. It doesn't have to be polished for me at this point. I've seen a lot of text document rule books, which are great because oftentimes me personally, I'm just looking for specific mechanics, right? I'm looking for specific triggers. I'm looking for specific interaction points. And so I've gotten good now at being able to say, okay, this is like this game. This is like this game. To skim through to get to the parts that are different or that I am unclear on. And the better your explanation is in that front half, the less I will be unclear on. And then the more I will just be going to verify, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Is there anything additional here? No. Is there anything additional here? No, etc. So for me, for rulebook, I think it comes down again to the structure should be in that idea of how to teach a game, which is start with the how to win, start with the ideas. If there's any specific terminology, like that will increase people's difficulty in understanding the game. If you have called victory points academy ribbons, that is a new language that people will have to learn, and they'll say, okay, I'm getting all these academy ribbons. The most academy ribbons wins, right? It's victory points. And that's fine. Like, it's great to have a thematic twist on it. But you only learn those things, and it's much easier to learn those things, I find, in person when you are moving the chips, and like this is not dollars. These are the Glork cubes. Tokens. Yeah, the Glork credits, right? Get your Glorks. Yeah. And so the more of that language that is introduced, it's still fine to like create the thematics of it, but the more specific you have to be with introducing that information. And so
Yep.
oftentimes I'll go through and it'll be a section of rules, and I'll often skip the setup in a rule book just for getting to like how the game flows, but I will need to return to the setup when the game flow starts saying, okay, grab your dominance tokens and your power tokens and move up 3 spaces on the intelligence track. And I'm like, okay, what are these things? How do they interact? So just being aware of how the information is introduced in terms of step by step. Like this is the intelligence track. It marks how you do this. It's like that's always a helpful part of me going like, oh, okay, like helping to get into the world. Whatever you can do to, if you're going to go full world building with your game, that's great. But then you also need to do a little bit of extra work, holding people's hand into how those things like react or interact. For final rulebooks too, examples are really good. Having a big, like, pictures are good of the closet cases. Thinking about in your playtesting, what is the common question that pops up, and then having that be your example, and having a clear example in that way, because there's going to be questions, and if it's the same question that's coming up, you say, oh, well, here's the example, and then the example sort of answers that question, which I find is helpful. It rather than needing to worry about like explaining all the closet cases down the line, that's also definitely helpful. There's there was another one in terms of those like pictures and closet cases that I was going to talk about, which having clear, but this is just a graphic design thing, but having important rules in lightly colored text boxes that are often not used for rules is not a good idea. There's often, I can't tell how many times
That's
that
like I skip those.
you skip them because you think they're flavor text, right? Especially if there's like world building
Flavor or
above,
corner cases or
or a corner case. Yeah. And then it's actually a really integral rule that is a very bad idea if it looks like it could blend into the background, because people will naturally, like, they're searching for one thing and they're trying to find where the eye falls and the highlighted thing. And I'll be scrolling and I'll be like, why haven't I seen this? It's like looking for the can opener in the drawer.
Like, here's
It's
how
like,
you move.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is that thing? It's right there. It's right in the middle of the page. But just sometimes the graphic design choice makes the brain, especially like if you're looking for things quickly, not like glom onto it. I was playing I just started playing Iridia, and so we did a quick start.
I've got that up on my shelf right there.
Oh yeah,
Elder Scrolls is on my table. Iridia is next.
Nice.
So,
yeah, it's been really fun. I played a few sessions with a buddy a couple of days ago, and we've been having a blast with it. But in the quick start, we hated it because they're like, this is the best quick start ever. And then they're like, okay, stop reading the quick start right now. And I'm like, okay. And then in the corner after that, there was like, oh, by the way, when you're doing this battle tutorial, get out these components. I'm like, you literally told me to stop reading the quick start here. I've been following this to the letter. And then in a sub corner in a different color, you have, oh, by the way, here's the thing that will make your that will make your entire combat. You're doing it on your own. Here's extra combat. Like, we were trying to both do the same combat on the same little map tile, and we were so frustrated because, again, of this sort of structure and like graphic design. And I think it's just having an idea of what stands out and what doesn't, how you introduce information is really key, and introducing it in a simple way, a logical way.
Yeah. I'll mention quickly that I have been working on the Deliverance rulebook amendment for second edition, and one of the common questions that we've had are like edge cases from all of our players. It generally, worked out very well. Everybody, the rulebook was a good rulebook, and everything was super tested and all. But one of the questions people regularly have is, we had this concept of angels fall back, demons surround. So we've changed it because it was hard to grasp. Where if I move into one of my fellow angel space, they're going to move back to the last space that that was adjacent to that I traveled. But demons, if a demon is here, it's not going to push the demon back because there's going to be this demon conga line going on.
Right.
It's going to start to surround the angels. And that was hard for players to grasp because they're like, well, this demon just moved its full movement. How can it get to like 2 spaces away, where, you know, an adjacent space over there.
Right.
And so what we did was we changed the rule to angels fall back, demons fall forward. And I just wrote this out. You know, when a demon can't go adjacent to you, it's going to go to the nearest adjacent space that places it closer in the direction of the angel. So it's just going to go up 1 or down 1.
Right.
But if all those spaces are taken, then it's going to go, you know, closer.
Yeah.
And you know, eventually they'll like in a slow, like in Critters 2, you know, when they all jumped together and became this
Yeah.
massive ball of death. That's kind of what happens slowly. And writing that edge case, those things are appropriate to use in those like different color in a box and whatever, because I actually don't want my players thinking about edge cases when they're just learning how to move. It's
For
like,
sure.
count a number of spaces away. By the way, don't forget demons fall
Yeah.
forward. It's like, what does that even mean?
It's
No,
order
I
of
just-
operations, right? Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, I think I mean, we could probably spend a long time talking about rule books. I bet we should have a whole podcast dedicated to rule books and what makes a great one, just for the sake of, you know, it can be a major turnoff for people.
Right.
For me, especially when I look at a rule book that is just sloppy. Oh man, it's like the game is going to be sloppy.
Yeah.
But even if it's in a text document, as long as it's organized in a way that's like logically makes sense and whatnot, I do expect them to get better and whatnot. But it's got to start in like some sense of like, I have to be able to trust that it will become 90% of what it needs to
Right.
be by the end at
Yeah.
least, right? So anyway, so Chris, how can people connect with you if they want to reach out about the World Series of Board Gaming, or maybe have
Yeah.
you talk about their stuff or send you a prototype copy?
Yeah. Well, so for anything World Series of Board Gaming, we have a contact form at wsbgvegas.com, or you can send me a message. My email is pretty simple to remember. It's chris@wsbgvegas.com. So you can send me a message, and I will always either be able to answer it myself or point you in the direction of somebody who can answer it as well. If there's any sort of publishers or people listening who want to run tournaments for their games, send me an email for sure. We love having things that our players can engage with, and we can set something up like that for sure. If you want to get more involved in WSBG, I can walk anybody through that. You want to host your own WSBG event, I can also walk people through that. Basically anything you could think of. You're like, hey, I want to be involved in WSBG and I don't know how. You can also send me an email. I'm happy to figure out anything and just brainstorm and do whatever. Again, just trying to do whatever I can to make that grow and make that successful and make it a great experience for everybody. And then on the Ruined Board front, you can go follow me, subscribe to the Ruined Board YouTube channel. The official URL is YouTube/@RuinedBoardReviews, because there is a Ruined Board furniture store that stole my glory. And I thought they only have it was such a battle. Would they have 3.8 or something, 3.84? Not that I check them every day. But I was like, once I cross that threshold, I'll be the Ruined Board that shows up in searches. It'll be me. I think it's still them that probably, even though I'm at 16,000 or something right now for Ruined Board. But yeah, you can come check me out on there. You can always send me an email too. It's ruinedboardreviews@gmail.com. And can figure out what happens. I for prototypes and for crowdfunding coverage, it's always finding that balance in terms of the amount of time that I personally have to invest in these things versus what's going to be good for the channel, what's going to focus on what do the audience want to see. For a lot of Kickstarter games, I've tried to transition to the paid playthrough approach, because then I can hire my friends to come and play games with me. It's the only way I can get them into my house. Please, oh please, I want to play games with people. I need to pay my friends to hang out with me. But also too, then we can go as silly as we want, or it gives me a little bit more flexibility to invest a bit more time and a bit more editing time into those videos. And so we always try to do something funny with them, whatever the theme is. I think my favorite one was this campaign, unfortunately didn't fund, but it's one of my favorite videos. It's a murder at Tealwood's Manor, and we all dressed up as it's like a reverse Clue game. It's a murder mystery style game, but you know who the murderer is. And so we all dressed up as some of the character portraits in there, and we had confessional cameras. And then my buddy Colin just did a bit where he thought we were actually playing Clue, and he was Colonel Mustard and consistently poured mustard on him throughout the video, which was a joy. So just like dumb things like that like to try to make it fun and interactive and exciting, and then ultimately people would watch the game more too if they're more entertained than just like a standard playthrough. So that's what I try to do now with unpublished games, and then if it's a published game, I'll check my schedule and check my shelf of shame and see how long the backlog would be, and then be like, hey, are you cool with 5 months? Because that's where I'm at right now. Just in terms of juggling sometimes 3 not full-time jobs, but they sometimes feel like it.
Yeah, totally understand.
So check me out on YouTube, Room and Board on YouTube, and I try to be very. I like building a community on YouTube. I think everybody who's there is cool, so I'll be in the comments a lot if you've got questions about games. Anytime somebody has a question about Rising Sun, you can come and you can comment on the Rising Sun videos, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Somebody sent me an Instagram message the other day being like, hey, I'm playing Rising Sun right now. We've got a rules question. I was like, I got you. I'm right here. let me help. So I try to be as responsive as possible, like comments and whatever. But yeah, so Chris at wspgvegas.com, or just check me out on Room and Board, and or check me out here as the third host of the Crowdfunding Nerds. This is the soft launch with the backdoor pilot. You've made it.
Yes. All right. Well, we do have a fourth member who is generally, he still works at the company and all, but he's just a robot now. So let's have Robot Richard send us out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy.